Just Blaze versus Swizz Beatz, two legends of hip-hop beat making. But what happened when both flipped the exact same sample? Well, today we're putting their beats side by side to see who came out on top. You're about to see a side of their production that's never been shown before. So let's settle this once and for all and find out who sampled it better. In today's video, we're going to break down how both of these producers made beats using the exact same sample, the different sampling techniques they used, and even some ideas you can use for your own beats. So let's start off by looking at the sample itself. This is a classic 70s soul song that both Just and Swizz used in very different ways. So we'll start by looking at Just Blaze's beat he made using this sample on Jay-Z's song called Song Cry. Can't see it coming down my eyes. And here's something that I have realized. The more Just Blaze beats I analyze on this channel, the more I appreciate just how skilled he is. This beat might sound simply put together, but as Just Blaze himself says, to make Song Cry, he used 96 different chops from this sample, and yet he made it sound seamless. In fact, the amount of amazing techniques in this beat impressed Jay-Z so much that other producers actually got upset at Just Blaze.
You worked on that record all night. I mean, I have never seen that. How many chops was
96. It's funny, a lot of producers got mad at me that day too, because Jay went and called everybody he was cool with, all the producers he was cool with, like, yo, you're good, but Just Blaze is a genius. I just wanted to tell you that. He did that to like 3 different dudes.
So let's break down how this beat was made. Here I have the sample loaded into my sampler and it is pitched up 2.5 semitones. But before we break down what the sample is doing, I want to quickly point out how well put together the drum loop is for this beat. A lot of great percussive work in my opinion. It's not simply just a hi-hat pattern to fill up space. Those shakers in the beat just sound amazing to me. But anyways, back to the sample. One reason why he created so many chops was due to the beginning part of the sample here, I believe. As you may have noticed, many of these notes aren't playing on time. I will play just the sample as it is along with the drums so you can hear. Even though the sample starts on time, the notes begin to drag over time. And before you think it's because I have the wrong BPM, if I change it, now the notes are rushing. So what's causing this problem are delays in how the performer is actually playing this instrument. So in order to get the notes to actually play on time, a lot of chops will need to be created. If you follow what the sample is doing, you will see the cursor in the sampler making small jumps ahead to skip over those delays that I talked about in order to sound more on time. Basically, the lesson here is that the more chops you create, the more control you have over exactly when each note will play. It's an idea that you can keep in mind. But this here is just one of the loops that Just Blaze creates using this sample. Right after we have this next section in the sample being used. But you'll notice there's a little bit more chopping and rearranging going on in the latter half of this loop. Now, why did Just Blaze do this? Well, if you were to use the sample as it is and let it just continue playing without these rearrangement ideas, you can hear those huge drums come in, and since this beat was made way before stem splitting was possible and Just Blaze didn't want these different sounding drums in the beat, he decides to basically repeat this phrase here to solve this problem. But you will also notice he reuses this chop here from our first loop that we looked at. And he does some smart layering by placing this chop underneath. This helps the beat for the exact reason that Just Blaze explained. Now the beat sounds seamless. This exact chop helps us transition from one loop into the next that Just Blaze builds. So now let's talk about the third pattern. Here we are going into a completely different section of the sample. You can see more than halfway through the sample, we have this new section here where the song minimizes with some singing and no drums here as well. And this is exactly what Just Blaze uses for his next loop. Now what I find interesting is that he decides to rearrange what the chops are doing in this loop as well. You can see here we have this chop repeating. The reason why he does this is because this particular phrase in the sample only has 3 beats to it. You can hear it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so to fix this problem, Just Blaze basically turns 3 beats into a perfect 4 by just repeating this chop. And then from here, he creates a 4th loop, which is a continuation of this exact same section from the sample. But here you'll notice at the very end, he decides to use the same chop from loop 3 in order to finish this loop up. And as you may have guessed, the reason why is the exact same as before. You can hear if we just continued playing this chop. At the very end of this section, we get the samples drums coming in. So those are all the parts of the sample that Just Blaze uses, but there are 2 more loops that he creates. And this is what I find most impressive about this beat, and it wasn't until I recreated it that I realized this. If you've been counting, we have 4 loops of 4 bars each, making a total of 16 bars, enough for a verse. So now the question is, what do you do for the 8-bar hook? Well, look at what Just Blaze creates here. He combines his loops together and they work flawlessly. Here, these are the chops from loop 1, and these are the chops from loop 3. And when played together, next he does this exact same thing again. These are the chops from loop 2, and these are the chops from loop 4, and when played together, this is just such an amazing display of layering to even have this idea, and the fact that it works so perfectly is remarkable to me. I gotta applaud him on this one. Moving on, now let's look at how Swizz Beatz used this exact same sample 20 years later on the soundtrack to Godfather of Harlem for the song If I Should Die Tonight.
If I should die tonight, yeah.
Now to me, this is a bit of an unfair fight. As you may or may not know, Swizz Beatz is not a sample-based producer. In fact, he is known as one of the producers who started the movement away from samples. And he's also known as the producer who did this. Not sure what that is, but when you break the beat down that he made, we see far less sampling techniques here. So this is the section of the sample that Swizz focuses on. It's a much bigger piece of the sample with more strings and some drums as well. And with Swizz's beat, we don't see much manipulation. The sample is played at its regular pitch, and this entire section basically just gets looped. And most of the producing is done by adding in a pretty standard trap drum loop onto this beat. And honestly, that's kind of it. This loop repeats and then Swizz plays that harp from the intro of the sample, and that is Swizz Beatz' approach to this sample. Not really a fair fight, so how about I throw my hat into the ring? I've been making beats using samples for more than 15 years, so let's see what I can do with this sample. And you can decide who sampled it best. Starting off, I'll bring my sample into my sampler. I'm a big enjoyer of harps, so this intro section is perfect for me. As you can see, I pitched and slowed the sample down since I am an enjoyer of darker, warmer beats as well. And I will create a loop using these individual chopped up notes from this harp. Like I mentioned, I want this beat to sound darker and warmer, so I'll use some tape emulation plugins, but I'll also use halftime set at a low mix amount. What this is basically doing is copying my loop and playing the exact same pattern at a lower octave and at half the speed. So it's basically just an easy way to fill up space in the low end. Having said that, I do feel this beat does need more presence down there, so I will layer my own sounds to go along with this harp. I think this electric keyboard would be perfect. But since I don't know music theory, in order to figure out what notes to actually play, I'm gonna open up Note Grabber, which shows you every single note inside of your sample and lets you copy and paste them into your own beat as well. And I'll use this to build chords to play along with my sample. So I'll grab this C sharp, this A sharp, and this F. And then for the next chord, I'll grab this C, there's an A sharp down here again, and an F. And I'll grab this C all the way up here too. Then I'll just simply drag this into my piano roll and make some slight adjustments. By the way, Note Grabber is a plugin I built, and if you use samples, this thing will help you just make better beats. You can actually try it out for free in my 14-day trial, so if you're interested, link is in the description box below. So far though, I think this is a great starting point, but I do want to add some more layers in detail. So next I will bring in this short plucky instrument here, and I'll create a smaller pattern with this. And again, just by seeing which notes exist in my sample with the help of Note Grabber, knowing which notes to use becomes much more simple. Next, let's add a bit more detail. I'm gonna grab this spacey electric piano here and create this short little riff. And the way that I built this was just by drawing in a simple pattern like this. Again, I knew these notes worked thanks to Note Grabber. And then I just took this phrase and then I squished it to play much faster. Next, let's bring in some big juicy drums to play along with this loop. And now finally I'll add my bass with some extra bit of detail. And so here's my beat. So comment down below who sampled it best, let me know. And I hope I at least beat Swizz Beatz' attempt. If you sample, a reminder, check out Note Grabber right next to me. You can try it for free for 14 days. Hit like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.